The sight of a state-of-the-art Formula 1 car suddenly losing all momentum in the middle of a high-speed sector is usually the precursor to a mechanical disaster. But what we witnessed in the Japanese Grand Prix weekend wasn't a standard engine failure. It was something far more calculated, subtle, and to the ears of those at Maranello, deeply aggravating. A new qualifying trick has surfaced regarding the 2026 power units, and while it offers a tantalizing edge in lap time, it carries a side effect that looks more like a glitch in a video game than a pinnacle of engineering. The first real sign something was amiss came during the practice sessions at Suzuka. We saw that Williams' Alex Albon come to a grinding halt on track, while the Mercedes of Kimi Antonelli and the Red Bull of Max Verstappen were seen limping through the S's and the high-speed sweeps of Sector 1. To the casual observer, it looked like a simple reliability gremlin. However, Verstappen himself later dismissed it as a glitch occurring when engine revs dropped too low during slow-speed maneuvering. However, this wasn't an isolated incident. Antonelli had reportedly suffered the exact same issue during the Australian Grand Prix weekend, though it flew largely under the radar of the global broadcast. It wasn't until 3 different cars powered by 2 different manufacturers experienced near-identical shutdowns in Japan that the FIA and rival manufacturers began to piece together the puzzle. The common denominator is that every single instance occurred right after the driver had backed off from a flat-out flying lap. To understand why these cars are suddenly dying on track, we have to look at the incredibly complex energy management rules of the 2026 era. The FIA regulations for the MGUK include a very specific staged ramp-down procedure. In a standard scenario, teams cannot simply cut their electrical deployment from 100% to 0 instantly. They are required to phase it down in 50 kilowatt intervals every second. The power must bleed away gradually as they transition into a coasting or braking phase. This is where the Mercedes Red Bull found a loophole. By exploiting a system originally designed for emergency shutdowns intended to allow teams to kill the MGUK instantly if a safety issue or a mechanical failure is detected. They found a way to maintain a maximum of 350 kilowatt deployment for just a few moments longer at the very end of a qualifying lap. Instead of the mandatory gradual reduction, the power drops from 350 kilowatts to 0 in a single heartbeat right as they cross the finish line. The net gain is marginal, but in a sport where pole position is decided by thousandths of a second, any extension of peak power is golden. It doesn't allow them to use more energy than the rules permit, but it does allow them to deploy that energy more efficiently for lap time by keeping the tap fully open until the final possible millisecond. The FIA wasn't entirely blind to the possibility of teams abusing the emergency shutdown. To deter this, the regulations dictate that if a team triggers a sudden 350 kilowatt to 0 cut, the electronic control unit or ECU locks the MGUK for a full 60 seconds. During this minute, the driver has 0 access to the electrical deployment. On a normal lap, a 60-second lockout would be death sentence for your race. But at the end of a qualifying run, that seems like a fair trade. The driver gets a power boost to the line and then simply spends the first half of their in-lap without electrical help. The problem is that with the 2026 engines, they are incredibly reliant on the MGUK to compensate for massive turbo lag. With the removal of the MGUH, the large turbos in these cars struggle to maintain speed when the internal combustion engine or ICE revs drop. Usually the MGUK fills in the power gap while the turbo spools back up. When the MGUK is locked out and when drivers slow down suddenly to let a faster car through, the engine revs and the turbo boost pressure plummet. Without the electrical safety net, the engine essentially begins to flood or limp, leaving the driver with no throttle response. We saw this clearly in Antonelli's data from Australia. He was tabbing the throttle pedal with 0 response from the car. It's an agonizingly slow process to bring back the engine back to life, often requiring the driver to wait out the remainder of that 60-second lockout before the MGUK can jumpstart the system again. While the technical curiosity of the trick is fascinating, the political fallout is where the real heat is. Ferrari reportedly annoyed, a polite term for what is likely a mounting fury within the Scuderia. Their frustration is primarily aimed at Mercedes, who remain the technical benchmark for these regulations. This isn't the first time Ferrari and Mercedes have clashed over the 2026 rulebook. Ferrari was previously upset by how Mercedes interpreted compression ratio rules. More recently, they were frustrated when the FIA changed the race start procedure rules to accommodate teams, including Mercedes, who were particularly struggling with the new turbo engine designs during launches. Ferrari's position is understandable. They claim they identified the difficulty of these new race starts a year ago when they were told by the FIA to fix their engine to match the rules rather than asking the rules to change. Ferrari complied and potentially compromising their engine's overall performance to ensure rocket starts. Now, they feel that their hard-earned advantage has been neutralized to help their rivals, while those same rivals are now exploiting the MG UK shutdown rules. Ferrari recognizes that what Mercedes and Red Bull are doing is technically legal, but they argue that it violates the intent of the rules. They are seeking clarification from the FIA. Is this a legitimate tactic, or is this a safety risk that needs to be clamped down on? The reason the FIA is taking Ferrari's concerns seriously isn't just because of the competitive balance. It's about the sheer danger of the cars stopping on track. At a circuit like Suzuka, this trick is particularly potent and particularly perilous. The run out of the final chicane is a prime deployment zone, making the extra power even more valuable for lap time. But we've already seen the darker side of these energy regulations. Ollie Bearman's sickening 50G impact with the barriers during the Japanese Grand Prix exposed, for the first time in a racing scenario, a major flaw with F1's new direction. Certain insiders have been warning since pre-season testing that this battery-dominated form of racing was an accident waiting to happen. And now that accident has happened, F1 is incredibly lucky that Bearman limped away with only a bruised knee. This was the exact sort of crash world champion Lando Norris warned back in Melbourne. Under the 2026 regulations, the 50-50 power split between the electrical and combustion engine leaves the cars chronologically energy starved. They simply don't have enough juice to get around a high-speed circuit without suffering dramatic and unpredictable drop in speed. When a car clips or runs out of deployment at the end of a long straight, it doesn't just stop decelerating, it effectively hits a wall of air resistance. If the car ahead runs out of battery 50 meters earlier than the car behind, the closing speed becomes terrifying. At Suzuka, the speed differential created by these varying deployment strategies and shutdown tricks is extreme. The opening sector is narrow, a high-speed ribbon of tarmac where there is no room for error. When a car like Max Verstappen's or Kimi Antonelli suddenly drops into limp mode while other cars are barreling through at 100 miles per hour, we are looking at a recipe for a catastrophic high-speed collision. Carlos Sainz, who survived a 46G crash in Sochi years ago, he has noted in an interview that sacrificing safety for TV entertainment via artificial battery management is a step backward. The current 2026 car is a series of compromises designed to appease manufacturers who want sustainable marketing. But those compromises are now manifesting in cars that are dangerously unpredictable on track. The FIA attempted to address these concerns with minor tweaks. For Suzuka, they produced the energy harvesting limits to try to normalize the driving challenge and prevent super clipping. This same super clipping has dominated for the past two events of the season. But as many drivers have pointed it out, this is merely sticking a plaster on a fundamental wound. The core issue remains. The power units are being asked to do much with too little. When you combine energy starvation in the race with the intentional MG UK shutdowns in qualifying, you create a racing environment where the driver is often a passenger to the software's limitations. The FIA's current stance on Mercedes' Red Bull trick is that it can be done as long as it's safe. But after multiple near misses at Suzuka, that definition of safe is being stretched to its breaking point. Mercedes reportedly opted to stop using this trick for the rest of the Japan weekend following discussions with the officials, realizing that the marginal gain wasn't worth the risk of an uncontrollably shutting down engine. As we move forward, the 2026 season is increasingly looking like a battery world championship. The battle isn't just about who can build the best chassis or the most efficient aero, it's about who can exploit the fine print of the emergency energy regulations without ending up in the tire wall. For now, expect that the technical departments at Brackley and Milton Keynes to be working overtime. They won't want to give up the qualifying edge, so they will try to look for ways to tune the software so that drivers can recover that engine without 60-second awkwardness. But if we see another car crawling through a high-speed blind bed in Baku or Silverstone, the outcry from Ferrari and the rest of the grid will be deafening. Formula 1 has spent decades improving safety, but these regulations have introduced a variable that feels inherently unsafe. In the pursuit of manufacturer relevance and electrical innovation, F1 must be careful not to lose sight of the most basic rule of racing. The cars need to be predictable, because at 200 miles per hour, there is no room for a glitch in the system. Whether the FIA intervenes or the teams quietly drop the practice out of fear, one thing is clear. The 2026 era has arrived with a rude awakening, and the political and technical fallout is only just the beginning. But anyways, this is a very fairly new channel, and if you like this type of content where we talk about F1 news, then please subscribe. And since you're already here on this video, why not give it a like down below as well.